The Roman Empire, the biggest deal in ancient history. These guys had it all. Giant temples, gladiator battles, roads that actually worked, and people wearing bed sheets like fashion statements. At one point, Rome was so massive that if you sneezed in Britain, someone in Egypt probably said bless you. But of course, like every great story, this one also ends. And boy, it ended with a bang. Or several. Mostly involving barbarians and bad decisions. Well, first of all, Rome got too big. Like way too big. Imagine trying to run a pizza shop in every city of the world, without phones, the internet, or employees that aren't trying to murder you for your job. That's kind of what the Roman emperors were dealing with. Managing an empire from Britain to Syria was basically like trying to babysit 100 toddlers with swords. Spoiler, it didn't go well. Then came the money problem. Rome needed cash, lots of it. But instead of fixing things, they started making more money, literally, like printing coins like candy. The problem? The coins were mostly made of worthless metals now, so everything got more expensive. Imagine buying bread one day, and then coming back the next day, and it cost your entire monthly salary. That's what inflation looked like. Roman edition. The economy was in the toilet, and surprise surprise flushing didn't exist yet. Now, while Rome was busy breaking its own economy and arguing over who gets to wear the emperor crown this week, there were some very angry people outside the empire. Enter the Goths, Vandals, Huns, and a bunch of other people whose names sound like heavy metal bands. These guys were cold, hungry, and tired of being pushed around, and they figured Rome looked like a good place to crash, and not in the let's hang out kind of crash. More like burn everything down and take your stuff kind of crash. And the Roman military? Well, let's just say they weren't exactly the Avengers anymore. Half the army was underpaid, underfed, and probably not even Roman. Rome had started hiring foreign soldiers to do the fighting, which is like asking your neighbor to guard your house and hoping he doesn't steal your couch. Meanwhile, back in the palace, emperors were dropping like flies. In just a couple centuries, Rome had over 75 emperors. Most of them lasted less time than a Netflix free trial. Getting the job was dangerous. Keeping it was worse. Assassinations became the most popular exit strategy. One guy was even murdered by his own guards during a bath, and you thought your Monday was rough. Eventually in 476 AD, things hit rock bottom. A guy named Odoacer strolled into Rome and told the last emperor Romulus Augustulus to go home, and Romulus was like 12 years old at the time. No joke. So the Western Roman Empire officially clocked out. No parade, no epic final battle. Just one barbarian saying, okay, I'm in charge now, and the kid emperor being sent to his room, forever. But wait, plot twist, the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, kept going. They were like, hey, we're still Roman. Even though honestly they were Greek, speaking Greek, and doing Greek things, but whatever, they wore the toga so they got the pass, and, you know, they kept the dream alive for another 1,000 years, before also calling it quits. But that's a different video. So why did Rome fall? Well, it was just too big, too broke, too divided, and too busy arguing while the outside world was like, setting everything on fire. It wasn't just one problem, it was all the problems stacked on top of each other, kind of like a very unstable Jenga tower built by guys in sandals. And that's how one of the most legendary empires in history became the biggest what went wrong case study in world politics. But hey, at least they left us some cool ruins, right? So Rome fell, Western Rome at least. The great empire that once flexed on everyone with its aqueducts and sandals was officially out of business. And now everyone was standing around like, okay, so what now? Well, the first thing that happened was chaos. Imagine firing the entire government and then just walking away. There were no emperors, no taxes, no roads getting fixed, no army to protect you, and no one to complain to when your neighbor started stealing your goats. The entire western half of the empire turned into a DIY survival game, except nobody had YouTube tutorials. With Rome gone, Europe fractured into tiny kingdoms, tribes, and what historians like to call barbarian warlords with identity crises. Everyone wanted to be the new boss, and everyone thought they were the chosen one. You had the Franks, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, basically the whole Vowel squad, carving out pieces of land and yelling, "Mine now." Meanwhile, cities started emptying out. People ran from the cities to the countryside because, well, cities without Rome were basically giant crime zones with no pizza delivery. So, the population dipped, trade collapsed, and education? Yeah, that took a long nap. Most people couldn't even read their own name. It was the Dark Ages, baby. A time where the most advanced technology was a torch and the biggest luxury was not dying of dysentery. Now, while Western Europe was playing barbarian Hunger Games over in the East, the Byzantine Empire was like, don't look at us, we're doing great. And to be fair, they kind of were. They had money, culture, and a guy named Justinian who thought he could take back the West. Spoiler alert, he kind of did, for like 5 minutes. Then plague happened, and the whole thing went kaboom again. Also, religion stepped into the spotlight. The Catholic Church was like, all right, Rome's gone, but someone's got to be in charge. And suddenly the Pope started gaining real power. Not just Sunday sermon power, but crown a king power. The church became the glue holding everything together, which sounds nice until you realize that glue was sometimes made with burning heretics and launching crusades. Fast forward a few centuries and guess what? That random tribe called the Franks ended up building a little thing called the Holy Roman Empire, which wasn't Roman, wasn't holy, and definitely wasn't an empire. But points for effort. Out of all this medieval madness came the rise of nations. France, Germany, England, they all slowly formed out of the ashes of Rome, like weird political phoenixes who couldn't agree on what Latin meant anymore. And perhaps the biggest plot twist, the Roman legacy never actually disappeared. Roman law, architecture, roads, and even the Latin language stuck around like old software that just wouldn't uninstall. Even today, if you've ever been in a building with columns or written something in English, you owe a tiny thank you to Rome. So yeah, Rome fell, but in a weird way, it never really left. It just changed costumes, moved cities, and showed up in the credits of pretty much every major European story ever told. And that's the aftermath. A lot of chaos, a lot of kingdoms, a very confused Europe, and the beginning of the medieval era, where everyone tried really hard to figure out what the heck just happened and how to rebuild the world without accidentally inventing feudalism. Too late.